Welcome to Bad at Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. We'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and perhaps of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Caroline's pink. The Caroline's pink is a critically endangered flowering herbaceous perennial plant native to North Caicos and Middle Caicos, islands in the Turks and Caicos archipelago, a British overseas territory in the Caribbean region, though in the Atlantic Ocean. Its scientific name is Stenandrium carolinae, and it was first described in 1960. Caroline's pink is small and low-growing. They are acaulescent, meaning that they have an extremely short stem, not visible above the soil, so the leaves often lay flat against the ground. The leaves are elliptic, oval-shaped, tapering at the tip and at the base where the leaf emerges from the soil. Leaves are roughly 1 inch long and half an inch wide with entire margins, that is, smooth edges. Both the upper and lower surface of the leaves are covered in a dense pubescence, tiny hairs, trichomes, an adaptation to prevent water loss in their hot, windy Caribbean habitat. Water loss, that is transpiration, is the evaporation of water from the above ground parts of a plant, generally the leaves and stem. This is a key mechanism in the plant's internal nutrient transport system, kind of like its circulatory system. So the plant's leaves release water vapor from tiny pores called stomata. That release creates an internal suction pressure which draws water and nutrients up through the plant from the roots to the leaves. This process, the transpiration rate, is partially regulated by the humidity at the leaves' surface. Humidity just describes how dense the atmosphere is with water, like how much water vapor is in the air. So the leaves release water vapor from the stomata, the tiny pores. Some evaporates and some accumulates in what's called a boundary layer. This is a thin layer of high humidity right at the leaf surface. water vapor evaporating versus accumulating affects the plant's transpiration rate. So, on a hot, windy day, the heat will increase evaporation, and the wind will interrupt the leaf's boundary layer, dissipating the humid air on its surface, which significantly increases the rate of transpiration, the rate of water loss. And so the Caroline's pink leaves are covered in these tiny hairs, these trichomes, that serve to help block the wind and sun. The hairs help to hold in water vapor, trapping it against the leaf surface, and they also reflect sunlight, reducing evaporation, decreasing the rate of transpiration, preventing water loss. So the Caroline's pink is adapted to its dry tropical habitat, this low-growing form, the trichomes. But when they flower, they grow a relatively tall flower stalk, up to 5 inches in height, to rise above the undergrowth to be conspicuous to potential pollinators. At the top of the stalk grows an inflorescence, a flower cluster of violety pink 5-petaled blooms. The Caroline's pink is a perennial, meaning they live for multiple years, flowering and reproducing multiple times. They generally bloom in the spring and are likely pollinated by bee and butterfly. Once pollinated, they produce small, dry, dehiscent capsular fruit. So a hardened dry fruit, less than 1/2 inch in diameter, a capsule that contains the seeds, which later splits open to release them. The seeds are dispersed by ballicory, expelled by force, like shot away from the plant. Capsule fruit splits open, and the seeds are flung away from the parent plant, distributed so that the new seedlings are not in direct competition with the parent for soil nutrients. This is a vital adaptation to the Caroline's pink's relatively resource-poor native habitat. Caroline's pink is native to 2 islands in the Turks and Caicos archipelago, North Caicos and Middle Caicos. These islands are located in the Caribbean region in the Atlantic Ocean, roughly equidistant from both mainland North and South America, roughly 600 miles from each. These islands are small, together only about 100 square miles. The Caroline's pink is found just inland from the coast, in a pine rockland ecosystem, a rocky landscape of weathered, creviced, and jagged limestone with thin soils and an open canopy dominated by Caicos pine, with an understory of sparse, low-growth, fire-adapted vegetation. Historically, this area would see wildfire ignited by lightning every 3 to 10 years. These low-intensity burns clear out undergrowth and consume fallen pine needles, returning nutrients to the soil. Fire-adapted conifers, like the Caicos pine, would survive, as would low-growing acaulescent perennials like our Caroline's pink, whose root systems survive underground, then regrow into newly resourced soils in a landscape cleared of competition for light and nutrients. Caroline's pink's range in these pine yards is very small, only about 5 square miles total. This is a tropical savanna climate with summer high temperatures that can reach into the mid-90s Fahrenheit. Winter lows only dip into the 60s. And annual rainfall is low, averaging roughly 30 inches per year, and is highly seasonal. Most of the rain falls between June and November. The Caroline's pink shares its island home with Caicos skink, Caicos barking gecko, Turks and Caicos rock iguana, West Indian osprey, Turks and Caicos curly-tailed lizard, Bahama woodstar hummingbird, buffy flowered bat, Caicos encyclia orchid, Caicos pygmy boa, Turks island leaf butterfly, North Caicos milkweed vine, thick-billed vireo, capillary buttonbush, hatpin sedge, Britain's buttonbush, Greater Antillean bullfinch, Drury's hairstreak butterfly, blue land crab, Turks and Caicos heather, Caicos pine, and many, many more. In the dream, to live on the outskirts of paradise, in the windswept bits, in the forgotten bits, in the parched cracks between glittering coasts. Here among the towering pines, aching for fire, aching for rain, peeking out from low cover to blossom. A tiny cluster of pink on the dusty back road to Elysium. In the dream. Historically, human activity has resulted in significant habitat destruction on North Caicos and Middle Caicos. Land cleared for construction, development, and infrastructure expansion, generally to cater to tourism, has profoundly reduced the available habitat for the Caroline's pink. Human intervention has also disrupted the pine yard's natural fire cycles, resulting in a buildup of overgrowth which compete with the Caroline's pink for light and nutrients. Today, the most pressing threat to the Caroline's pink is in fact a threat to the Caicos pine. The human-introduced invasive pine tortoise scale insect has devastated the Caicos pine. First recorded in 2005, the scale insect has since wiped out 95% of the Caicos pine population. A catastrophic loss in general, and a catastrophic loss of a keystone species in the Caroline's pink's habitat. As the scale insect feeds on the pine, it excretes a sticky substance that fosters the growth of a black sooty mold. This mold covers the leaves of understory plants, including our Caroline's pink, blocking sunlight, impeding photosynthesis. Additionally, as the Caicos pines die, the ecosystem is shifting from an open canopy savanna to a more densely foliaged overstory, which also shades out low-growing vegetation. The conservation and protection of the Caicos pine is likely critical to the long-term survival of the Caroline's pink. Additionally, human-induced climate change, global warming, due to persistent over-reliance on fossil fuel burning, is an oncoming threat. Areas of the Caroline's pink's range are only a few feet above sea level, and so as a warmer climate results in melting ice caps, our oceans rise. And the coasts and immediate inland of low-lying islands, like North Caicos and Middle Caicos, are threatened by this sea level rise, initially by saltwater intrusion, which would kill freshwater vegetation. Relatedly, the Caribbean region is seeing an increase in the frequency and severity of extreme weather. Again, the result of human-induced climate change, in this case specifically hurricanes. More intense hurricanes means larger storm surges, which inundate the low-elevation pine yards with salt water, again causing mortality to both the pines and to understory vegetation like the Caroline's pink. Fortunately, the Caroline's pink is legally protected in Turks and Caicos, law which now requires consideration of the species prior to new construction and development. Their seeds have been collected and stored safely off-site at the Kew Royal Botanic Gardens Millennium Seed Bank. And conservation interest in the Caicos pine has brought attention to this habitat, which will likely have positive repercussions for the Caroline's pink. Nevertheless, the Caroline's pink has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2012, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 975 Caroline's pink remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the Caroline's pink was compiled from the IUCN. From the Proceedings of the California Academy of Sciences, Series 4, Volume 62. From Plants of the Bahama Archipelago. From Brightia, Volume 2. From Journal of the Arnold Arboretum, Volume 51, Number 3. From Times of the Island, Spring 2024. From UK Overseas Territories and Crowned Dependencies, 2011 Biodiversity Snapshot. From the Plan for Biodiversity Management and Sustainable Development around Turks and Caicos Ramsar Site. From the UK Overseas Territories Conservation Forum. And from Plant Diversity, Volume 41, Number 2. For more information about ongoing conservation work on Turks and Caicos, please see the UK Overseas Territories Conservation Forum at ukotcf.org.uk. So now I would like to improvise some music in hopes of making space to be in contemplation of the other beings with whom we share our earth, like the Caroline's pink. I do not intend to force meaning upon or extract meaning from the Caroline's pink. Instead, I want this music to simply express my awe for all life. So I will pause in the space of sound and reflection, and I warmly invite you to join me. honor the life force of the Caroline's pink. I will commit its name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this tiny, beautiful being. And I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. So in the name of the Caroline's pink, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and my inactions. I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitat by individuals, corporations, and governments. And I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bada Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin. Goodbye.